Hello, my fellow seekers. Welcome to Into the Work, therapy for empaths, seekers, and the intuitively driven, where you have front row seats to therapy sessions and expert interviews that will help you define the important work that you're here to do. So I guess you actually have something better than front row seats. You practically have a seat on my couch. That's right, you will have unrestricted access to actual sessions with real people, exploring real life issues. You will continue to be inspired by powerful conversations with experts and healers that might just share exactly what it is that you need to hear to get unstuck. I am Michelle Pauverman. I am a recovering people pleaser and former anxiety-driven empath, turned now mostly grounded psychotherapist and intuitive coach. I have been helping people for almost 20 years manage their limiting beliefs and anxiety to finally stop the self-sabotage and step into their gifts. I created this podcast, Into the Work, to give you a place to learn more about yourself and give you actionable strategies to finally move those roadblocks holding you back so you can go for what you want. Above all else, my hope is that this podcast is a catalyst for your awakening. If you're listening, you've already taken a step towards getting off of autopilot, and our next steps together will be taken episode by episode, waking you up to the possibilities, the new ways of thinking and being, so that you can stretch into that next level of your story. The spark has already been lit, and my friend, this is a journey from spark to brilliance. So together, let's light a fire. Hey there, and welcome back to the show. Today we're going to explore the question, are you an empath or are you just having a trauma response? We're going to outline the differences for you to understand your own experiences better. This question comes up a lot, believe it or not. I've actually wanted to talk about this for a little while because this is a question that comes up a lot. People ask this question because they truly, honestly aren't sure if they are really an empath or if just the experiences they're having in their bodies and their sensitivities to other people are just part of their trauma response. And there are people out there who don't necessarily even believe in being an empath, right? There are people in the world who don't believe the whole empath experience thing exists and that they see it as a heightened level of hypervigilance from trauma versus this superpower to experience of people's emotions and energies and such. We're going to highlight a little of the science that's growing along the way. And we're also going to throw in there, and why not? Because this question comes up all the time too. We're also going to talk about how highly sensitive people, otherwise abbreviated HSP, are also different than empaths and how they're the same. So over the years, so many people have asked me this question. So as you're starting to consider what you believe, let's begin by making sure that we are using the term empath and talking about the same thing, have the same language here. And in order to do that, I think we need to also understand the difference between being an empath and having empathy. So to start, empathy is the ability to experience a great deal of compassion for somebody else while we're able to imagine what it's like to walk in someone else's shoes. Some of us have some really strong senses around empathy and can be really compassionate and really can almost feel what it's like to truly walk in someone else's shoes. People who have a great deal of empathy can feel a lot of their own feelings about what someone else is going through, even though they can really experience what it's like to walk in their own shoes. They're really harnessing their own emotions to experience that. Empaths, however, are individuals who innately or naturally sense and actually experience other people's emotions as if they were their own. And other people's energy and sometimes physical symptoms are also things that they experience as their own. Okay? Now, empaths don't filter these things out like other people. In fact, they can be highly sensitive to all kinds of stimulation, like noises and lights and smells, large group of people can be really draining. And what makes empaths different than everyone else is that last piece, and that is that they experience other people's emotions and physical sensations, potentially like pain, as their own, along with that clairsentience psychic gift that is their ability, and that is to perceive energy and emotions that are beyond the five senses. In this light, they are different from highly sensitive people who also share a really reactive neurological system and therefore share a lot of that same sensitivities of our commonly shared five senses. So, that same thing where light and touch and smell or sound or noise levels, our visual stuff can be really overwhelming. But empaths experience emotions, physical sensations, and sense other people's energy as their own, okay? So super interesting. They have done some research on neuroscience of empathy, and they discovered that mirror neurons are potentially one aspect of what make empaths empaths. Now, these brain cells are responsible for empathy and compassion. So when we observe somebody else's emotions, the same areas of our brain that are active when we experience those emotions ourselves are also activated. So these cells get activated by us witnessing other people's emotions as if we're experiencing it ourselves, right? So they're almost like these mirroring what's happening, and that's what causes empathy, or that's what we see when somebody's experiencing empathy and compassion. Now, some research suggests that empaths have more mirror neurons than the average person, and this may cause the mirror neurons to become overactive, which can lead to empaths absorbing all this emotion coming in from other people. It is also said that empaths also have a different energy field. And I probably talked about this multiple times in the show, so I won't spend too much time here, but that our energy field, the outer protective layer of the energy field, is more porous. It's different. And so people who are empaths, they absorb more, right? And so they experience more in the body. Our energy fields are the first line of defense between us and the rest of the world. And those energy fields also keep us from being enmeshed with everything in the world, right? So if those energy fields on empaths are more porous, then it's letting in things that other people's energy fields do protect them from, or do separate them from, I should say. So now let's compare someone experiencing a trauma response and someone who is an empath. So while being an empath is innate, it's lifelong, with trauma, typically there's a before and an after the event. So people remember being different before the event. And many times trauma happens in childhood and is therefore obviously harder to pin down, especially if it was chronic, like growing up with an abusive parent. However, this is a before and after still. Unless you are an empath or a highly sensitive person prior to the event, then there is a before and an after where you did not experience these things that were confusing for being an empath. Experiencing trauma can make somebody highly attuned to subtle cues in other people, leading them to sense potential danger or emotional distress more readily. So if you have some trauma in your life, you're probably like, yeah, I get that. Like, I'm always able to sort of scan the room. I'm always kind of aware how other people, what kind of energy is in the room, what other people are doing in the room, where they are in the room. Following the big event, there is an onset of symptoms, and these traumatic events often trigger what we kind of refer to as survival mechanisms, such as hypervigilance, which is like constantly scanning for danger or conflict. That fight, flight, freeze, fawn is a way to avoid rejection or harm. And that's all put into place. And so you might see some of that happening. Sometimes it's dissociation, and that's sort of the freeze a little bit. But that dissociation, disconnecting from your emotions or the environment, is something we see in trauma. And also over-identifying with other people's pain due to our own unhealed wounds. When we look at trauma response, which is basically your reaction to whatever happened, because it's not the event that makes it a trauma, it's your response to it. And so when you look at how did I respond to this thing in my life, and then you've learned, okay, I have this sort of traumatic response. It's caused a lot of stress that's been not just acute, but ongoing. That event can manifest as increased empathy. That is definitely something that happens. We are, because of that, over-identifying with others' pain due to unhealed wounds. We can really feel deeply about what other people are going through. It can really hit home hard for us when other people are in pain, especially if it's got anything to do with what we've been in pain about, right? What our traumas have been. Now, when we have a response, it's primarily characterized by a set of psychological and physiological responses, which are triggered by a stressful or dangerous situation. Essentially, not everyone who experiences a trauma response will be considered an empath, but some people may develop heightened empathy as a result of trauma due to a need to anticipate potential threats in the environment, right? So they start to get really sensitive about the environment. They start to have that over-identifying that we just talked about, which is having that over-identification of the pain someone else is in and feeling like it's their own. So typical signs of being an empath, however, are genuine sensitivity to energy, emotions, and environments. They don't require us to be extremely stressed out. They don't require us to feel in danger. They don't require us to really be under any conditions at all, that we just actually have a sensitivity to energy. We actually just have, regardless of our emotional state, we have the ability to experience at times other people's emotions. And we feel things in the environment in our bodies, such as even other people's pain can just start showing up. I think I've told the story already, so I'm not totally positive at this point what stories I'm telling or not on this podcast, but there was that story when I was in the grocery store, and that was the beginning of me opening up my practice. And I was in the grocery store and I'm trying to get, food on the belt. And I remember being in this searing pain in my leg. And I literally remember sweating, because I don't sweat. I'm not actually a sweater, but I definitely got caught off guard. And I started wondering, I think I need to leave all my stuff here. I think I just need to leave. I can't be here. I got to go. It was hard for me to stand. It was so, so painful. So I turn around and this guy behind me is on crutches. He's sweating. When I tell you he looks freaking miserable. And he looked at me kind of weird because he didn't understand why I was acting the way I was. And he became aware of me. And I just thought, oh my God, this isn't mine. And then as soon as I recognized it wasn't mine, it went away. And that's one of the phenomenons that happens for empaths, is when we can identify that it's not ours, we can actually control it and manage it. That's why it's so important for you to show up and recognize that, to ask and to do your work, to recognize what's yours and what's not yours. But it's not a common thread to have to be afraid or feel unsafe or to be even in a state of anxiety in order to experience feeling other people's emotions, okay? Now, the overlap between the two, that unhealed trauma can amplify empathic traits for everybody and make it hard to distinguish between feeling energy and being triggered. For example, an empath might feel somebody's anger, but a person with a trauma might interpret the anger as a threat due to past experiences. So they might be like, oh, I'm sensing somebody's anger. Oh my gosh, I see it, I feel it, I know it. And then they feel the threat of it because it's bringing up a response in their body that's afraid. And that's where, when you have trauma, so an empath might feel somebody's anger, but a person with a trauma will be interpreting that anger as a threat. And I don't just mean cognitively interpreting it. I mean their body is interpreting it as a threat, suddenly flooded with anxiety as a response to that anger, having visceral responses to that person's anger, freezing, whatever that trauma response is in the body. If you're you leave your body, you're taking a run for it, you're getting ready to fight. So you are experiencing your own reaction to something that you're picking up. And you're picking it up because you do have a hypersensitivity, because you have this trauma. It is causing you to be hypersensitive. But there is a difference between feeling somebody else's emotions in your body as if they're your own and identifying emotion, feeling and sensing it in a sense, right? Like you're sensing it. You're like, you're picking up on the cues that person's angry. And those cues can come up really fast for you because you're really, really sensitive to picking up the cues. And then you're having your own internal response to what that anger might mean to you, right? Based on what your trauma response is. So typically in trauma, your body is in survival mode. It does make it difficult to discern if you're absorbing someone else's emotions as an empath or if you're reacting to subconscious trigger from your past. So there are questions that you can ask. I mean, outside of what I just said is recognizing, am I feeling this because of the other person or is it triggering something within me? An empath is feeling this because it's what the other person is feeling. Someone who has been traumatized is having a trigger released in their body, and it's something that's happening within them. It is a response to the thing they're picking up, the cue that they're reading, and boy, do they really read the room well. Another question you can ask yourself is, does this emotional reaction feel familiar from my past, right? Is this a familiar reaction that I'm experiencing in my body? And now we can experience somebody else's emotion in our body that's not ours, and we're experiencing it ours, and it can still feel familiar. But we want to look at, when you're wondering if it's a trauma response, you want to look at, is this emotional reaction my go-to reaction, right? Is this a reaction that I go to when I am feeling triggered by something? And one way to really check in to see if you're an empath or if you're experiencing symptoms of trauma is to get yourself into a regulated state, okay? When your nervous system is calm, you feel safe and connected to your body. This state allows for a clear perception of your feelings versus external energy. So while you have a regulated state, it supports your boundaries, right? When you are regulated, and by that, again, I just mean calm in your body, grounded, heavy, you're not stressed. You're not up in your head worried. You're really just in a very calm state. And this generally helps empaths manage observing this experience of other people's emotional energies versus being consumed and enmeshed by them, right? So it's a good exercise to make sure you're grounding every day. But they can still experience this stuff in a calm state. So as an empath, you can be totally calm and still be like, oh, whoa, I feel a lot of her anger. You can be really just all good, right? And then you are experiencing the energy of someone else, the physical pain of someone else. Whatever's going on is coming like a psychic hit, right? It's like coming on quick and hard and strong, or, you're sensing it coming in. You can, in a calm state, recognize the emotion and decide that it's not yours. In fact, I teach many of my students to simply ask, is this mine? Yes or no? And wait to see if you receive an answer that resonates with you. People who were triggered by a trauma response often have the whole sensation go away once they're regulated. So when they're calm and it's like relaxed and there's total safety in the environment, they're not feeling these things. So that's another way to really tell that there's a difference there. Now, of course, you can be all of the above, right? You can be a highly sensitive person. You can be somebody who has experienced trauma, and you can be an empath. All those things can be true, right? Lucky you. I mean, really, right? You're going to get this trifecta response. I think when you have a lot of these heightened experiences, they do end up kind of becoming spiritual awakenings in a lot of ways. There's parts certainly about being an empath that is all about spiritual awakenings and allowing your psychic gifts to kind of marinate and grow. And I think those are things for you to also celebrate. The empath piece and the even being highly sensitive person has special gifts with it. But there are ways in which you can do things that really help your nervous system to regulate, because regulating your nervous system is a beautiful thing for all of us under any of those circumstances. I don't know if you've ever gotten into any breath work, but certainly slow, deep breaths or connecting with nature can calm your body, separate your energy from others. You can find people who do breathwork sessions. Those are a little more intense. They can be big trauma clearers. Okay, so buckle up. Sometimes breath work can really shake things up and strangely have you in a ball of tears, not understanding what's happening. But it's really removing trauma from the body. It's pretty powerful stuff, and it's some neat science behind it too, as they're finding what's really happening during breath work. But somatic techniques, shaking, tapping, if you know EFT, things like that, gentle movement releases the stored trauma in the body, and we know we need to move trauma from the body in order to regulate. Now, these things are also beautiful ways for you to activate your vagus nerve. And the polyvagal theory, you could look it up. It's very interesting. It's kind of been groundbreaking in psychology. But this way of working with the vagus nerve can completely regulate your system. And that can be done by these things we're talking about. It can be breath work and meditation and shaking and tapping. Different things that you do to kind of move energy are just wonderful ways for you to regulate your stress response. To end, healing trauma doesn't make you less of an empath either, and it makes your gift more manageable and authentic. By healing trauma, you're really going to feel that you can step into your empath gifts, and you're going to be able to really be sharper in identifying when, your body is regulated and you have safety and you have released some of this trauma. You have an ability to step into your gifts, and they're beautiful and they're amazing. And I hope you get to them if that's you, if you're kind of all of the above. So I hope this was helpful. I think that I might have nailed the point here that it really is a separate thing to be an empath and to experience trauma response. Even though there's a whole bunch of people in the world that don't believe that this empath thing is real, I can surely attest to the fact that it is, and that you are on the right track if you're looking at doing some of this healing work so that you can really step into it and let it expand. Really requires some boundary work. That's like maybe the forefront of everything. I always say that you want to change anything and everything in your life, really sit down and do some really deep down boundary work, because it is going to challenge you in some deep, deep layers of your stuff that needs to be healed. So sending you lots of love. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I will look forward to talking to you next week. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to Into the Work Therapy for Empaths and Seekers. Don't forget to grab your free gift, your Shadow Work Transformation Bundle, at michellepoverman.com. I've included everything you need to get started to break through the patterns of self-sabotage and finally start to heal the parts of yourself that are getting in the way of truly reaching your potential. From a powerful meditation designed to help you meet and embrace your shadow self, to the guide that's full of curated prompts and important questions to support you on this journey. This really can be the work for you to unmask the root cause of all the issues you've been experiencing, honestly, and start to feel free to believe in yourself and go for what you want. The link for this free bundle is in the show notes. And if you like this episode, I would be so grateful if you could take a moment and rate, click and follow, and leave a review. Of course, you can always follow me on socials at Michelle Poverman. And keep in mind, as you embark on your journey from spark to brilliance, remember, the universe is always conspiring in favor of your awakening. Everything that's happening is in support of you lighting your own fire within. So until we meet again, may your path be well lit and your heart be guided. Shine bright, seekers. Until next time.